With the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, this ultimate all-in-one grooming kit is set to have you looking and feeling your best in the summer sun. Trust Manscaped and unlock the confidence you need to turn heads this summer by visiting manscaped.com/skillup for 20% off plus free shipping. With Manscaped's help, let's make this your smoothest summer yet. Gamers, first of all, just an FYI, I had to lock down the script a little earlier than usual this week as I'm traveling on a secret mission, so if I've missed any news or updates that are broken in the last day or so, that is why. We'll circle back to that stuff next week when I'm home. Outside of that, it's been a pretty huge week on the channel. 2 reviews last week and 2 editions of This Week in Video Games, including the special bumper edition devoted to the Xbox stuff. Even though I uploaded that a few days after the Xbox news had broken, I still knew I'd be missing some stuff by the time that video went live because that story was moving pretty quickly and new revelations were coming to light, and of course we hadn't yet had an official response to the reactions from the Xbox triumvirate, Phil Spencer, Matt Booty, and Sarah Bond. Well, Bond stepped up to the plate on Friday at a special event hosted by Bloomberg. Her response was such a colossal flop that it was not only embarrassing for her, but also disrespectful to the people who had just lost their jobs, because clearly Bond had put no effort whatsoever into preparing for this question. She just blurted out garbage word salad when 3 minutes with a pen and paper before heading up on stage would have allowed her to prepare a coherent response to a question she knew she was gonna get. And not for nothing, but the camera work here is accidental art. Roll it, Stu.
I think one of the things that was most upsetting both to Xbox gamers and to employees is that, one of the shuttered studios in particular just created a hit game, did really well on Game Pass in terms of engagement, and won a ton of awards. Shouldn't succeeding in that way ensure the future of a studio?
One of the things I really love about the games industry is it's a creative art form. And it means that the situation and what success is for each game and studio is also really unique. Like, there's no one size fits all to it for us. And so we look at each studio, each game team, and we look at a whole variety of factors when we're faced with sort of making decisions and trade-offs like that. But it all comes back to our long-term commitment to the games we create, the devices we build, the services, and ensuring that we're setting ourselves up to be able to deliver on those promises.
So first of all, Bond, panic in her eyes, gives an absolute flop of an answer, just absolute nonsense and waffle. And just as she's getting to the part about talking about making tough decisions and trade-offs, the camera operator pulls to the wide shot, revealing Xbox's year-over-year growth, showing explosive growth 4 years ago, and only a modest decline since then that still puts them roughly 5 times bigger than they were 4 years ago. And this graph does not contain any of the growth that would have come from the Activision Blizzard King acquisition. Just frame this shot. It is just too perfect. But it was an extremely disappointing appearance and response. Again, you knew this question was coming. How could these answers be the best that you or any of your PR spin people could come up with? I mean, to me, it really speaks about what a shit show it must be over there right now. Clearly, they're just so panicked that no one thought to maybe put together 3 or 4 bullet points so Bond had something to say at an event that everyone knew was in the diary. It makes me wonder how Phil Spencer is going to go when he fronts a live audience in June at IGN FanFest in LA. Phil has been booked for that event and IGN have been hyping his appearance. Like, how is that conversation gonna go? Is Phil gonna do another Phil's bad man like he did on Kinda Funny? I think we're all done with that chapter of Phil's leadership, and I think IGN are gonna have to be pretty careful about who they hand the mic to because people are pissed, and live audience questions can get pretty dicey. My hope is that Phil keeps that appointment and that IGN not only seek to ask the questions that need to be asked, but also push him if he refuses to answer them. We can't have round 2 of Sarah's word salad masterclass. And if that's the plan, then Phil should just cancel that appointment right now and save us all the trouble. Oh, and by the way, all this cost-cutting stuff over at Xbox isn't over. Jason Schreier of Bloomberg is reporting that in addition to the 1,900 jobs slashed in January of this year and the recent round of studio closures, Xbox is also offering voluntary redundancies to people throughout ZeniMax. He also ominously adds, quote, others across the Xbox organization have been told that more cuts are on the way, end quote. Look, I'm going to be really stunned if 343 emerges from this totally unscathed. They've already had cuts, of course, but it's still a big studio. And we're in a position now where I think all of us can agree that the next Halo game should probably come from a different studio. Hopefully 343 do hang on, perhaps contributing as a supporting studio to other projects. But yeah, I definitely worry about the fate of that studio. At the smaller end of the spectrum, you've got stuff like Ninja Theory, Double Fine, Obsidian, and Undead Labs, with Microsoft telegraphing their intention to focus on big IPs, and with a proven track record of shutting down high-performing, award-winning developers like Tango Gameworks, it's got to be a pretty nerve-wracking time to be a developer working under the Xbox banner. Certainly part of the reason that Microsoft is effecting such a large strategy pivot is the stagnation of Game Pass subscription numbers. The dream of 100 million Game Pass subscribers feels more and more impossible by the day, as new data showcases flatlining performance. Industry analyst Matt Piscatella reported in 2023 that gaming subscriptions had grown only 2%, and this year they're tracking for around 1% growth. A reminder that Xbox is still making billions from Game Pass, but unless it's growing, then the shareholders are not going to be happy. Don't worry though, Microsoft has a plan C they can turn to now that plans A and B have failed. Plan A being make good video games, and plan B being just put stuff on Game Pass. Plan C is mobile, and after much teasing, it seems as though that plan is about to take flight. In the same painful Bloomberg interview I showed earlier, Sarah Bond revealed that Microsoft were about to launch a mobile storefront. She says it'll be web-based, at least at first, meaning that it will sidestep any restrictions imposed by Apple or Google. It'll launch in July, and the initial lineup of first-party Microsoft games will be Candy Crush and Minecraft. She says that it'll offer an end-to-end experience that links your play across different devices, which is a weird thing to crow about since many games already do that, either through crossplay or through dedicated mobile clients that are also available on other platforms. Think Genshin Impact, Marvel Snap, Diablo Immortal, etc. Either way, it's a pretty central pillar of Microsoft's future gaming plans, as the acquisition of Activision Blizzard was largely predicated on the fact that they'd also get King in that deal, a massive mobile player that gives Microsoft a foothold where Sony and Nintendo have little to none. So there you have it, Xbox's next big rollout is Candy Crush, only through a new web-based storefront. Good luck with that. Don't worry though, there are actual video games to look forward to as well, like Perfect Dark. You guys will remember that Microsoft revealed this 3 years ago in a cinematic trailer containing no gameplay, and they announced that it was being made by a newly formed outfit called The Initiative, who back then positioned themselves as the world's first quadruple A developer, a mantle that Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot was only too happy to seize upon when he declared Skull and Bones the world's first quadruple A video game, and we all know how that went. Since Perfect Dark's reveal, the only thing we've heard about it is that it's kind of in development hell. The initiative seemed to collapse nearly as suddenly as it appeared, with Crystal Dynamics being brought in 2 years ago to provide support, and since then reporting indicates that Crystal Dynamics have effectively taken over leadership of the project. IGN did a deep dive investigative report into the state of Perfect Dark last year, and when they came up for air, they didn't have anything good to report. The project seemed to have made little progress since its first reveal, and a recent round of reporting from various sources indicating that little has changed since then. This past week, Jeff Grubb was speaking during the Giant Bombcast, and he said, quote, "I've been hearing for years that Perfect Dark is in a rough state, but it sounds like it's in a very rough state. It doesn't sound like it's really come together in any way since then," end quote. While Alex Donaldson of VG247 said something similar, quote, "I have some crazy stories about the development of that game I have not put in print out of respect for a team really trying hard to push a boulder up a steep hill," end quote. After that though, Jeff Grubb went back to his sources and got some more up-to-date information. He's now saying that the game has actually made some progress, and that some of the more intractable challenges it was facing have now been solved. He's even going as far as to say as we may see it at the upcoming Xbox showcase in June, which frankly is a big surprise, and I wouldn't have guessed that'd be the case. Nothing confirmed on all this, of course, so be sure to take these reports with a grain of salt. With everything going on at Xbox right now, we got to thinking, how are developers feeling about this? How are developers feeling about Xbox as a platform? And is everything from the multi-platform moves to console sales to recent closures affecting their plans to publish their games on Xbox? So, we asked them. We put these questions to a bunch of developers who had all recently released games on Xbox, from solo devs to mid-sized studios, and all of whom have seen some good success with their work in the past. It was a deep dive piece led by Edmond, and you can find the full write-up over on Patreon, freely available to everyone. It's not behind a paywall. TLDR though, individual experiences varied, but there were some very common threads that have been going on for a while now. Getting on Xbox Game Pass is basically a must if you want anyone on Xbox to play your game at all. For devs who don't have massive runaway hits or big publisher backing, the developers we spoke to said it's only worth porting your title over to Xbox if they cut you a Game Pass deal to offset the work and costs, as Xbox sales are always the smallest slice of the pie because very few people actually buy their games on there now. Said one developer, quote, "You just aren't going to sell the same units as you would elsewhere. It's a bit like trying to sell a DVD to someone who uses Netflix. Sure, people still do that from time to time, but you're not targeting the right audience," end quote. It seems like there's a bit of a vicious cycle going on at the moment, and if something doesn't doesn't change, it seems it'll only lead Xbox down a path where fewer and fewer developers are actively choosing to bring their games onto Xbox, or even to PlayStation in some cases, especially in a world where you can get by just fine by being on PC and Switch, where all the money and the players seem to be right now. There's a lot more info in the full piece, including some really interesting quotes from developers and publishers, so if you want to check out the whole write-up, head over to Patreon where it's free to read, and give us some feedback. We're looking to do more of this stuff in the future. That's why Edmond joined the team actually, so we'd love to hear what you think, what you like, what you don't. Drop a comment over on the Patreon or just here in the comment section below. So clearly Xbox are going through it right now, but they are not alone, as Sony has had themselves one hell of a fortnight and it is far from over. Last week we covered the absolute mess that was the PSN requirement for Helldivers playing on PC. That led to a mass downvoting of the game that was so coordinated and so successful that Sony's high command was forced to bend the knee, removing the requirement. Part of the reason they did that was the revelation that only a select number of countries and territories can legally create PSN accounts, with over 177 countries and territories excluded from being able to do so. That would mean that people in those countries and territories would have to create PSNs with fake addresses, which is against Sony's own terms of service. That shit cannot fly, and Valve really can't be a party to that, which is why Helldivers 2 was delisted in a huge number of countries and territories. With the announcement that Sony would be doing an about-face on its PSN linking policy, we had assumed that the game would be immediately relisted in those 177 countries and territories. Wrong. Turns out that it's still not back up in those territories despite there being no requirement for it to have PSN link. It's really weird, to be honest, and kind of inexplicable at this point. The Arrowhead CEO Johan Palstead did comment on the matter, saying this, quote, "I'm speaking to our partners at PlayStation and Valve and pushing for it to be undone. Getting the account linking took a Herculean effort, but I won't rest in my desire to have it available everywhere," end quote. But he and no one else has actually explained why this delisting is still in effect. One person on a subreddit posted a response to a customer service ticket for Steam. That response said that the game was delisted at the request of the publisher, but I learned long ago not to read too much into what one random customer service person might say, since they're often just firing from the hip. Better to wait for an official update from Sony or Arrowhead. But things got even weirder this week when it was revealed that Ghost of Tsushima, which launches this week on PC, was just delisted from roughly 200 countries and territories. Now, to be honest, I actually saw this coming, and the reason for that is that Ghost of Tsushima will not require a PSN to play the single-player part of the game, but if you want to play the multiplayer, then you need to link your PSN. That was reiterated by Sucker Punch themselves just last week, in fact. Now, if you do happen to live in a country where Sony does not let you create a PSN profile, then Sony is effectively selling you something that you can't use, and Valve, again, cannot be a party to that, opening them up to liability in the form of refund requests, or depending on the consumer protection laws in a given country, possibly regulatory action. So while it isn't confirmed that Valve are the driving force behind these delistings, I strongly suspect that they are, because I would do exactly the same thing if I was Gaben. And to be honest, if he is doing it, good guy Gaben. It's bullshit that Sony would sell a product at a single price point, but you get less of that product depending on where you live. If they were to split these things out and offer a discount to those who are only able to play the single player, then fair enough. But they're not doing that, so it's right and fair that this product should not be sold in this way, as disappointing as that is to the many in those countries and territories who are disadvantaged by Sony's bullshit. Steam and Greenman Gaming are both issuing automatic refunds ahead of the release this week. I'm sure we'll hear more about this one very soon, so stay tuned. So that's Xbox and Sony, both are having a pretty shit couple of weeks. How's the Big N doing? Well, they're just fine and dandy, thank you. They posted financials this week, and there they announced the Nintendo Switch was just about to overtake the Nintendo DS as the company's best-selling console, at a time when everyone is reporting that the console market is dead. The Switch is about to hit 154.82 million units, eclipsing the DS's lifetime sales of 154 million units, and the Switch still has a little bit of life left in it, as the next Switch won't be out until sometime next year. Speaking of which, Nintendo low-key announced the Switch 2 this past week. I mean, sort of, but not really. Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa took to Twitter this week, and here's what he had to say, quote, "Kendrick clearly won," end quote. Is it too late to make jokes about Kendrick and Drake? I feel like I missed that chance last week. No, what Furukawa actually said was this, quote, "This is Furukawa, president of Nintendo. We will make an announcement about the successor to Nintendo Switch within this fiscal year before 31 March 2025. It will have been over 9 years since we announced the existence of Nintendo Switch back in March 2015. We will be holding a Nintendo Direct this June regarding the Nintendo Switch software lineup for the latter half of 2024, but please be aware that there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during that presentation," end quote. So there you have it, a showcase coming in June, and while he did rule out a Switch 2 reveal, he He didn't rule out a Silk Song announcement. We gotta create false hope when we can, ladies and gentlemen. There was one other spot of Nintendo news this week. They're disabling their Twitter integration. So this is another example of just how badly Elon Musk has screwed Twitter. This past generation, all three platforms added a share button to their controllers and their interface, and that button would almost always lead to Twitter, allowing you to seamlessly post screenshots or videos directly from your console. That's a pretty powerful thing for a social media platform to accomplish, literally changing the hardware configuration of all three major platforms to accommodate the power of your reach. Of course, when Elon let that sink in, he decided that any company looking to hook into Twitter's API should pay for the privilege of generating content for his platform. So he decided to charge major companies up to $40,000 a month. As a result, both Sony and Microsoft removed their Twitter integration a while ago, and now Nintendo has followed suit. Nintendo announced the disabling of the integration on Twitter, and Twitter Gaming then quote tweeted it, being like, "Oh, our partnership with Nintendo is still really strong," which is total bullshit, of course, so much so that the tweet got community noted and ratioed into oblivion. So Twitter Gaming deleted that original tweet and tweeted out the exact same thing, only to get noted and ratioed again. You love to see it. Hey, speaking of really popular CEOs that we all love, let's check in with old mate Andy Wilson, boss man of EA. Been a while since we've heard from him, but he's still the same old Andy we remember. This week he was speaking to investors hyping up the year ahead for EA. He confirmed that there were 2 unannounced titles coming in FY25, the first being a partner title, and no one really knows what that is. The other one is an owned IP title, widely believed to be Dragon Age Dreadwolf. This has been in the works since Noah wore short pants, and it's absolutely do or die for BioWare. Behind the scenes, chatter is this one's actually looking pretty good, which would be fantastic, because it's been a hot minute since a strong BioWare release, and by hot minute, I mean 10 years. Wilson would then go on to provide an update on the next Battlefield game, a really important one since Battlefield 2042 blew a massive hole in the side of that community, and despite numerous updates and improvements since launch, the game never fully recovered. Wilson said that the team working on the next Battlefield game is the largest Battlefield team in the history of the franchise, which makes sense because there's now multiple studios on this game. Wilson says he's been playing it and you wouldn't believe it, but he loves it, and he also says it's going to be a, quote, tremendous live service, end quote. Oh man, he was of course speaking to dead-eyed investors who froth at the thought of recurring revenue. The rest of us hear that and groan as we recount the myriad live service flops over the past decade, including the last Battlefield that released. I wish I could say, I'm sure EA has learned their lesson and won't repeat the same mistakes, but if there's one thing I could be sure of, it's that the learning capacity of corporations is directly proportional to their quarterly earnings shortfall. If EA DICE and its supporting studios get time enough to make a good Battlefield game, chances are we'll get a good Battlefield game. But if old mate Andy needs to dump another half-baked busted-ass shooter onto the market in order to hit his yearly earnings KPIs, then he will do just that. And if he still misses his quarterly earning targets, you know what he'll do? Put ads in your games. Seriously, this is something he talked about at the same event. He was asked a question about the potential of putting ads in games, a topic that EA has spoken about in the past and experimented with, in fact, like when they put full screen ads for the boys in UFC 2020, and people got so pissed off that EA had to disable them. Not to be discouraged, Andy is still on that, responding to the question thusly, quote, "We have teams internally in the company right now looking at how we do very thoughtful implementations inside our game experiences. I think it's still early on that front, and we have looked over the course of our history to be very thoughtful about advertising in the context of our play experiences. But again, as we think about the many, many billions of hours spent playing, creating, watching, and connecting, and where much of that engagement happens to be on the bounds of traditional game experience, our expectation is that advertising has an opportunity to be a meaningful driver of growth for us," end quote. So, there you go. Something to look forward to in the next tremendous live service from EA, I guess. EA have delivered consistently strong financial performance over the past decade, not so for beleaguered publisher Square Enix, who have truly stumbled this past generation despite having a number of titles that were critical and commercial successes. That patchy track record led them down the live service path with games like Babylon's Fall, and also saw them try their hand at various blockchain and NFT scams. At the same time, they put out bangers like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Octopath Traveler 2, numerous excellent Final Fantasy XIV expansions, and they even published Power Wash Simulator. Bet you didn't know that was a Square Enix game, did you? It's all coming home to roost for Square Enix now, though. In their most recent earnings report, they declared an extraordinary $140 million loss, owing largely to them recognizing losses associated with cancelling a bunch of projects. Profit was down a staggering 70% year on year, with Square Enix saying, quote, "We launched many titles, but some failed to live up to profit expectations, especially outsourced titles and some AAA titles," end quote. The AAA titles they're referring referring to probably includes Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which despite being a critical success is selling approximately half of what Final Fantasy VII Remake did. No doubt hurt by the fact that it's a PS5 exclusive, where the previous game was also available on PS4, which had a much larger install base. A few days after this earnings call, Square Enix announced a major strategic overhaul that would see them aggressively pursue multi-platform games and bring more of their development efforts in-house. Square specifically called out their desire to be on all platforms: PC, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox, and they even said that mobile will be on the table for their PC launches. Square said that the projects they cancelled were given the chop because they didn't align with this new strategy, indicating that at least some of them might have been platform exclusives, probably PS5. They also said that they plan to prioritize quality over quantity going forward, so I think we can expect fewer of those smaller JRPGs, which I know will come as a disappointment to some. They concluded by saying that they plan to rebuild their overseas business divisions from the ground up, though that is unlikely to be development studios. It's probably going to be PR, marketing, and regional publishing support. Square Enix calls these plans medium term, meaning that they should be executed inside of 3 years. A tough transition for Square Enix to make, but hopefully one that pays dividends, since Square Enix has felt shaky for some time, and we definitely don't want to lose them. Last bit of major news for the week was an update from Warner Brothers on the performance of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and I hope you're sitting down for this because you're not going to believe it. It totally flopped. The Warner Brothers CEO hosted an earnings call, and there he reported on Warner Brothers' recent disappointing performance, saying, quote, "The $400 million plus year-over-year decline during Q1 was primarily due to the very tough competition we faced in games against the success of Hogwarts Legacy last year in the first quarter, in conjunction with the disappointing Suicide Squad release this past quarter, which we impaired, leading to a $200 million impact to EBITDA during the first quarter," end quote. This does not mean that Suicide Squad cost Warner Brothers $200 million. It's just commenting that the revenue decline versus last year is a combination of Harry Potter doing really well and Suicide Squad doing not well at all. Given that we still haven't heard a peep about the long-term plans for that game, it's all but assured that it's totally Jova, and the game will go on life support after the data mine content and pre-sold season pass stuff is out the gate. Concerns now turn to the fate of Rocksteady. After what happened to Arcane Austin, we really hope we don't see the same chain of events play out here as well. A quick lightning round to finish off. PlayStation has a new boss man, or boss men actually. They just announced that succeeding outgoing CEO Jim Ryan will be 2 people. Herman Hulst, previously head of PlayStation Worldwide Studios, has been appointed to lead the newly named Studio Business Group, focused on making games as well as TV shows and films based on those games. Accompanying him will be Hideaki Nishino, who will lead the newly named Platform Business Group, which includes console hardware, technology, accessories, and network infrastructure. That group also includes third-party relations and partnerships. Very strange to see the empire carved up this way. Interested to see how this experiment will play out. A very odd and still developing story. Double 11 are about to release the many times delayed Prison Architect 2, but before the game is even out, they're announcing that they're stepping off the project and splitting from publisher Paradox. A supporting studio by the name of Koku will now take over and deliver the title. Double 11 said that they couldn't come to an agreement on commercial terms, and so that's that. Really crazy, and you gotta be at least a little worried about how Prison Architect 2 will be when it launches, since not having the main studio around to help push it over the finish line has got to result in at least a few issues, to say nothing of what it means for future game updates. Stay tuned for more on this one, I suspect. The hype is building for the next Doom game. There's plenty of chatter that we might see an announcement at the upcoming Xbox June showcase, and a recent trademark filing by ZeniMax certainly lends credence to that suspicion. The trademark is for IDKFA, which is a cheat code used in the original Doom that would give you full armor, all guns and ammo, and all keys. Id Software have been quiet since the release of Doom Eternal back in 2020, so 2024 feels about right for a new game reveal. Get ready to rip and tear, though sadly without Mick Gordon providing the music. A very sad chapter that we shouldn't soon forget. Pentiment just won a Peabody Award. That's really cool. One of those small games that wins awards, just like Matt Booty wanted. Surely this award and the general critical acclaim that Pentiment received cements Obsidian as an indispensable part of Microsoft's development stable. That's how it works, right? Right? Remedy has cancelled Project Kestrel. It was originally meant to be a free-to-play live service game published by Tencent, but was rebooted to be a premium game when market conditions shifted. Now it's been shit-canned altogether, with Remedy focusing their efforts on their existing portfolio of projects, those being Control 2, the Max Payne 1 and 2 remakes, and a co-op shooter set in the Control universe, which to be honest, sounds kinda rad. Marvel Rivals publisher NetEase has been pulling some serious bullshit with their efforts to promote this game. The closed alpha happened this past weekend, and a bunch of creators were allowed in so long as they signed a contract. A content creator by the name of Seagull tweeted out some of those contract terms, which basically banned content creators from being critical of the game in any way, shape, or form. I haven't seen shit that brazen since the days of Warner Brothers and their Shadows of Mordor contract, which got them into huge amounts of hot water and resulted in a bit of a reckoning across the industry that saw contracts cleaned up. NetEase have since issued an apology calling the terms a miscommunication. Yeah, right, sure. Apparently the game is good, by the way, so this move is just a massive own goal that does nothing but make people skeptical of the final product. Some quick sales and player count numbers for you. Hades 2 has rather predictably smashed it, hitting a peak concurrent player count of over 103,000 players in its launch window, twice the highest that Hades 1 achieved, though that did launch first on the Epic Games Store back then, so the context is a little different. Princess Peach Showtime and Mario vs. Donkey Kong have both sold more than 1 million units, proving that it's easy to sell games when you have over 150 million hardware units floating around out there. Dead Island 2 just passed 7 million players across all platforms, including Game Pass, a huge result for a game that absolutely everyone was sure would suck, given the very cursed development cycle it endured. Capcom just recorded their 7th consecutive year of record profit, with sales up 21% this past year alone. That success attributed to Street Fighter 6, Dragon's Dogma 2, RE4 Remake, and ongoing Monster Hunter success. No mention of Exo Primal in there though. I'm gonna guess that one didn't quite pop off in the same way. Sega has also recorded a 20% increase in revenue owing to the success of Persona 3 and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and Bandai Namco announced modest growth, bringing them to over 1 trillion yen in net sales. Their growth attributed to the strong performance of Armored Core 6, Tekken 8, and of course Elden Ring, which are still selling strong to this day and about to sell a whole lot more with the imminent arrival of the expansion in June. V-Rising launched into 1.0 and hit an impressive 130,000 concurrent players, so big congrats to Stunlock for that one. And Little Kitty Big City shipped over 100,000 units in less than 48 hours. As I said last week, cat people, the game makers now have your number. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, that Rogue Prince of Persia game now has an official release date. It was meant to arrive earlier in May, but will now arrive on May 27th. The developers Evil Twin specifically calling out Hades 2 as the reason for that delay. Very smart call. Speaking of Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed Red is now officially called Assassin's Creed Shadows. By the time this video is live, that reveal trailer should already be out, so I'll circle back to that one next week. Rumors of a November 27th release for that one, but that is unconfirmed. I'm sure you'll find out before I do, because I will be on a plane when that reveal trailer goes live. A new Jurassic Park game is on the way from Frontier, who earlier delivered Jurassic World Evolution 1 and 2. We assume it's the third game in that series, but they didn't confirm that, so it could be anything. Stay tuned. The Apple Vision Pro is getting a Marvel What If immersive storytelling experience. It's apparently got to do with collecting the Infinity Stones, and you travel the multiverse to meet different variants of your favorite heroes. Not sure how it's going to utilize the capabilities of the Vision Pro, but to be honest, I'd like to find out. So Apple, if you're listening, please send me a Vision Pro. Thank you very much. I promise I was just kidding when I dunked on your awful iPad commercial. Multiverses is getting the Joker, and bonus, he's being voiced by Mark Hamill. That does make it the last time that Hamill's Joker and Conroy's Batman will be together, a bittersweet end to an iconic partnership and collaboration. Asus has announced a new ROG Ally is on the way. It'll get a full reveal on June 2nd, but for now we know it has improved battery life, storage, and RAM. It also comes in black. Nice. And finally, 2 events to shout out. The first is a Wholesome Direct being hosted on June 8th in the Summer Games Fest window. It'll feature over 70 wholesome indie games. That is a lot of games, man. Kind of feel like maybe too many. I don't know. The other event is South by Southwest, which started out in Austin before making its way to Sydney. In 2025, there will also be a London show. South by is fantastic for how it profiles independent games and even larger stuff, since they managed to snag some pretty high-profile guests. So I definitely recommend putting it in your calendar if you're at all close to where they're being held, or if you're willing to make a trip. So what came out last week? Well, V-Rising hit 1.0, and as I mentioned earlier, it did very solid numbers, achieving over 130,000 peak concurrent players. Luckily, Stunlock really did wait until this one was fully baked before releasing it, as the user reviews on Steam are tracking very strongly, 87% very positive, and critics are equally impressed, putting the game at a strong 83 on OpenCritic. PC Gamer really loved it, scoring at a rare 89 and saying, quote, "The developer would have had to have monumentally screwed up to tarnish that already fantastic experience. Instead, with small improvements and more endgame content, it's thankfully just made a great game even better," end quote. While V-Rising exits early access, Hades 2 enters it. It was shadow dropped last week, and people are low-key blown away by how much content Supergiant have managed to pack into just the early access offering. Supergiant aren't surprised though, since they warned us, quote, "Hades 2 in early access already has more environments, foes, and fully voiced characters than the full version of the original Hades game," end quote. That is insane. With 26,000 reviews counted on Steam, the game already sits at a very positive 94%. Most critics are holding off numbered review scores until it emerges from early access, but IGN's Mitch Saltzman didn't hold back. He finished everything the early access had to offer and was so impressed with it that he scored it a 9 out of 10, saying, quote, "Hades 2 feels impossibly huge and unbelievably polished by any standard, much less an early access game. Mel is awesome, the new tweaks to the combat and progression are excellent, and it's just unbelievably feature-packed with twice the content of the first," end quote. Hey, remember when Donkey came out a while back and he said he was going to open a publisher but only publish good video games, and heaps of people laughed at him? Well, who's laughing now? Because his label's debut game, Animal Well, solo developed by a guy named Billy Basso, has absolutely crushed it, and it's already going down as one of the all-time greats in the Metroidvania genre. It's sitting at 96% overwhelmingly positive on Steam, and critics have it at a mighty 89 on OpenCritic. Eurogamer did not hold back, scoring it a perfect 5 stars, saying, quote, "I'm astonished by the ease with which it presents its ideas, the joy these ideas bring, and the sheer range of magical stuff it includes, all clipped together in such a satisfying manner, and fittingly, for a game about wells, I'm astonished by how deep it all goes," end quote. Put another way, it's a masterpiece. Was that close enough? It was close enough. Austin also loved it. He reviewed it. Link below the like button. TLDR, he strongly recommends it precisely because of how much it evolves the Metroidvania formula in ways that you really can't explain without spoiling the game. It's kind of like Outer Wilds in that way. Plus, did you know the entire game is like 30 megabytes large? I don't know what sort of tech wizard this Billy Basso is, but they should detain and study this person because it really does feel like he has too much power to be walking the streets. While Austin was playing Animal Well, I was busy playing Homeworld 3, which arrived exclusive to the PC on the 9th. It's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. On the one hand, it nails the Homeworld vibe, which is kind of the most important thing. The visuals, soundscape, unit design, and missions are all fantastic, but the campaign storyline really sucks. It's just not good. It does not fit the tone of the franchise, and various technical issues, missing features, and balance issues are going to require some time to iron out. Critics were pretty satisfied with it. It's sitting at a strong 80 on OpenCritic, but the early Steam reviews are less enthused, with the title sitting at a mixed 57%. The technical issues and the inclusion of de novo DRM, which absolutely everybody hates. I definitely think this is one worth keeping an eye on, jumping in when you feel like the updates have improved things enough, or the price point has lowered enough to make it feel like the right fit for you. So what's coming out this week? Pretty huge week, actually, far more than I would have expected, but a few things snuck in last minute. We knew Ghost of Tsushima was arriving for PC today, and that would have been for everyone, but now it looks like it's only for those who live in a country where you can legally create a PSN account. Very much hoping that Sony can sort this mess out, also hoping that this Sony port is one of the good ones, since Sony's non-Nixus made PC ports are a bit hit or miss, definitely more on the miss side. Here's one you should really keep a laser eye on, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes. This is from the studio that brought you Sayonara Wild Hearts. This is a very different game here, inspired by the sullen vibes and fixed camera angles of a PS1 survival horror game, though this is not a survival horror game. It's a puzzle game, one that insists that you use an actual real-life notebook to help solve the puzzles. Edmond's been playing this and he loves it. I've heard similar buzz from other reviewers. Auteur game maker Sam Barlow also loves it. It's arriving for PC and Switch today. Speaking of Edmond, he played Mullet Mad Jack during the most recent Steam Next Fest and also got a kick out of it. It's a corridor shooter inspired by 90s anime, and it's simple but satisfying fun. It arrives today exclusive to PC. Classic WoW nerds, Deathwing cometh. Again, that is, since we already killed him like 15 years ago. The Cataclysm expansion launches into WoW Classic this week, tearing asunder the lands of Azeroth, literally. I still feel like the Barrens was such a downgrade, by the way. It had all this lava and shit everywhere, and I don't know, man. The Barrens was cool before Deathwing messed with it. Anyway, wasn't sure if Blizzard was going to go this far, but I guess they're doing the whole thing. Next stop, Mists of Pandaria, I suppose. Biggest release for the week, in my humble opinion, is Hellblade 2, launching exclusive to the PC and Xbox on the 21st. But let's be real, it's almost certainly going to end up on PS5 at some point in the future. This continues the saga of Senua, who faces threats both internal and external in a dark fantasy world inspired by Norse and Celtic mythology and culture. The first one was critically acclaimed for its story, presentation, and handling of complex issues like mental health, and the second one looks to be more impressive in every regard. Given how little marketing Xbox has put behind this one, I really hope it finds an audience and goes gangbusters because, yeah, I mean, you know all the reasons. The System Shock remake arrived last year on PC to stellar reviews, and this week it'll arrive on PlayStation and Xbox. That drops on the 21st. Paper Trails is a delightful looking indie title we profiled a few weeks back on the Put This On Your Radar segment. You fold paper to open new paths forward, kind of like that Viewfinder game that dropped recently, except instead of photography, it's origami. This arrives on the 21st, exclusive to PC. And finally, Ubisoft are launching their COD-esque X Defiant. It's a free-to-play competitive shooter that combines different factions from across Ubisoft games like The Division, Rainbow Six, Ghost Recon, Watch Dogs, and more. In terms of how it plays, it's a very COD feeling, but there's a big focus on operator kits and objective-based game modes, so it's almost like Overwatch meets COD, so if you like Black Ops 4, chances are you'll like this too. It's launching on all platforms bar Switch on the 21st. I like this, to be honest. It was fun. It's not the kind of game I'm looking for right now, but it seems well made, so I think there's a good chance it'll find an audience. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. I have no idea what the hell this is. Put this on your radar. So this is called Arctic Eggs, and it's a game about someone who's trapped in some sort of dystopic sci-fi research facility in Antarctica, and for some reason there seems to be a lot of hens in battery cages, and it's your job as the poultry peddler to fry up eggs for the hungry people who are also trapped with you there, only you're not just frying eggs, you're frying bacon and beer bottles and cigarettes. I guess it's a prison economy down there, so you gotta season the eggs with whatever you've got on hand. It's from an outfit that goes by the name of Water Museum, as well as Abmarine, Cameron Ginnick's, and Cocky Duty. It's a Steam exclusive. Best of all, it has 3 different difficulties, each of them changing the wall height of your frying pan. It looks all kinds of messed up, and I'm totally into it. It's out tomorrow. I've left a link to it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and there really isn't much to shout out as we are mid-month. Hell, I can't even shout out Epic's giveaway as it's currently under wraps as a mystery entry, though that usually hints at something good to come, so do be sure to check back later in the week. There is one thing though, Bungie's free-to-play shooter Marathon is now available. If your heart skipped a beat thinking that Bungie just shadow dropped their next big release, then gotcha! The Marathon I'm referring to is the original Marathon from back in the day. Bungie worked with a community modding team to bring the game into the modern era. It's not a remake or a remaster, it's just a straight port to modern hardware, though it does contain a number of improvements to align it with modern hardware capabilities. Stuff like widescreen, positional audio, 60 FPS support, and a few other things. That's listed as Classic Marathon over on Steam, and you can download it right now for free. Our feel-good story for the week is actually not related to the recent Xbox news, and I want to be clear about that. This is not some revenge fantasy, it's just some dude who really wanted to fight Phil Spencer in Fallout 76. Spencer is actually a huge Fallout 76 fan for some reason. He plays on the reg and always has, and a guy who goes by @real1090jake has always wanted to fight Phil Spencer in Fallout 76 because reasons. Speaking to Kotaku, Jake said, quote, "It's not much to it. I've been planning to catch him for a while now to see if he would agree to a fight. Trying to take him down was just a personal goal for me after I finished the main quest line. This was a calculated attack, lol. I have no beef with Phil," end quote. Jake did manage to track Phil down at one point, but was disappointed when Phil didn't throw down. Quote, "I honestly just wanted my 1v1, but he wouldn't attack me back. He waved and did a couple of hearts when I caught him alone," end quote. With the bitter taste of friendly pleasantries in his mouth, Jake was left with no choice, so he did the only thing he could do. Dropped a nuclear bomb on Phil Spencer's Fallout 76 camp. The attack was noted by someone on Twitter, with Jake then claiming responsibility for it and providing video evidence. The funniest part about this, though, is just a day after that attack, Phil Spencer completed the quest called Officer on Deck, which is the quest chain that unlocks your ability to launch nuclear weapons. Phil is clearly not taking this one lying down. Alright, ladies and gents, it's been a long show, so thanks for sticking with us all the way through. As I said, I'm away this week, but a few things to look forward to while I'm away. Austin has been dumping a huge number of hours into the early access for Hades 2, so look forward to his take going up later this week. We have a pretty huge episode of the Friends Per Second podcast going live over the weekend too. We're chatting with the Hellblade 2 creative director Don Matthews. We talked to him about all the shit going down at Xbox right now and how he feels about all that, as well as what we can expect from Hellblade 2 when it launches next week. We also chatted with the folks from Airship Syndicate, who just announced that they're releasing Wayfinders into 1.0, but they're making it an offline game. They're ripping out all of the live service components, selling it as a premium product. A really interesting story about the journey to that decision, so be sure to tune in for that one when it's live. That's all I got for you today. Like the video if you liked it, sub to the channel if you'd like to come back next week, ding that bell so I can hassle you at inconvenient moments. Thanks as always for watching, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Manscaped. Down here in Australia, we are heading into winter, so we are freezing our balls off. And that is something that very few sponsors would let me say in an ad read, but luckily this video is sponsored by Manscaped, a company who has a stake in your balls. Probably should have reworded that. In the Northern Hemisphere though, you guys are barreling towards a hot guy summer. That is, so long as you're taking care down there. Nothing spoils a chiseled beach body like unsightly growth below the board shorts line. Luckily, Manscaped have got just what you need to keep you looking great, board shorts on, or kid off at one of those nudist beaches. Their crown jewel to help you take care of the family jewels is their Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, and let me tell you, it's got futuristic tendencies. In the kit is the all-new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, the most advanced ball trimmer in the history of the human species. Your body hair will tremble in fear at the sight of it, for it knows it cannot withstand the two interchangeable blades, one of them skimming off the top and the new foil blade for a closer shave. The hair can try to run and hide, but it will not succeed, for the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra features dual LED spotlights to provide contrast on multiple skin tones. With that sort of illumination, there is nowhere for those wayward hairs to hide. That's not all though, since the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra also features 3 length setting combs, plus it's waterproof, making it safe to use in the shower and very easy to clean. The Performance Package 5.0 also includes the nose and ear hair trimming Weed Whacker 2.0, as well as the Crop Soother aftershave lotion and the Crop Preserver anti-chafe ball deodorant. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back. Hell, Manscaped are feeling generous, and so right now if you grab the Performance Pack 5.0, you also get some Manscaped boxers, very comfy, as well as the Shed 2.0 travel bag. Hot Boy Summer has never been this easy thanks to Manscaped. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you visit manscaped.com/skillup. That's 20% off plus free shipping when you visit manscaped.com/skillup. The summer sun is here to stay, so trust Manscaped to keep your pubes away. They wrote that, by the way, not me. That's classic Manscaped copy. God bless them. Thanks Manscaped for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.